fun episode tonight. Of course, KC Grid Talk, as always, sponsored by DPK Americas and PitFit. So, with that being said, I figured, why not? I need a little bit of help this week. Need someone else to join me. And so I figured we can't have KC Grid Talk without PitFit, and we can't have KC Grid Talk this week without Trey Shannon. Trey, you know, it's been a while since I've seen you. It's been a couple months since I've been in a PitFit, but I mean, how are you doing tonight, man?
Doing great. Thankfully, a little bit better than your co-hosts over there, and hope they both feel better soon.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. 104 fevers, sitting in bed, laying in bed for 2 days. Not the best way to spend the week after a race weekend, but they'll be back. Of course, the recovery and everything. But on your end, I mean, it's been a busy a busy year for you so far with a lot of traveling, a lot of clients doing well in races. I mean, sum up how you guys' efforts have been so far in 2025.
Yeah, it's the year's definitely gotten off to a pretty good start. We've been pretty busy with bumping up our track support program. So a few of us were at the Daytona Rolex 24 down to Daytona. Thankfully, the team we were working with won that in GTD Pro. So very excited for the Multimatic Ford Performance team. It was super cool to be a part of that and get to go up there with the guys at Victory Lane. And we had some drivers that ended up on the podium as well. So it was a cool weekend, and makes the 38-hour workday a little bit more worth it when you get a little bit of a champagne shower at the end.
Yeah, and I mean, you've been going to the 24 hours of Daytona for years. You've kind of been sort of around the paddock, but how special was it to kind of get sort of that win this year and kind of see the program that you guys have put together, the trackside support that has kind of come along over recent years, and kind of put that into fruition this year and kind of be a part of a victory as special as that?
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I didn't really imagine that, when we started expanding our track sport program and trying to get more into that. And, we just were fortunate to get latched on with a really good team, and they put their trust in us to deliver a good service for them. And thankfully they've been really happy with working with us. And, we just kind of found ourselves, I guess, by dumb luck at that point, that we're with the winning team. But watching that program grow and working really hard to expand that and work with more teams up and down the IMSA paddock has been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of hard work, but to have it start paying off like that is definitely really rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you guys have worked quite a bit throughout the ladder of racing. I mean, you can name any number of PitFit clients all the way from IndyCar down to grassroots level karting. But, as you see sort of the progression of drivers that you've worked with in karting, I mean, how do you feel about kind of where your karting program is at into 2025 and some of the guys you've worked with over the course of the last year or so?
Man, I can't tell you how proud I am and how fun it is to watch these kids that, I call you guys all kids, but drivers that we worked with since they, some of them since they were 14, 15 years old, moving on from karting and going into other programs. And, the obvious ones on the list for that would be like Weston Workman and Tyler Wettengel and, guys like them. And to see them, up at the next levels and winning races there is super cool. It's something I was hoping I could have a little bit of an impact on, a driver's career like that. But to see them continue to succeed is just, it's awesome. It's more gratifying than I could have ever imagined, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, those were guys that like you said, that were 14 or 15 when they started working with you. You kind of saw the growth of them going from sort of, in some cases, like in Westbrook's case, like starting out on the club level to ending up where he is now. I mean, what do you, as you look kind of at how you've sort of developed as a coach and kind of what you've seen over the course of the 8 years that you've been working with karting clients, I would say, I mean, where do you feel like the most, I guess, what gives you the most pride when you see kind of how they've developed?
To be honest, when I see them win the right way, when I see them race clean and fair, and they're not they're not punting people out of the way to get W's, and when they're doing it the right way, and then when I see them just determined, when I see them pushing through adversity, and see them get knocked down, and the way they get back up, and that was something we always tried to really instill in all of them, all of you guys that we work with, that were that come to us at a younger age, and still a little bit more moldable than, let's say, some of the professionals that come our way. But just to see that kind of determination and resilience, that's probably the best part. And then just seeing them be good people, outside the racetrack. I love when somebody's when somebody gets into grad school or something like that. I love seeing the off track wins with these guys.
100%. And I mean, I always think about the poster that you have with me and Westwork in the lobby there. I wasn't able to get it hung up behind me. That was supposed to be one of my background things, but
One of my favorites. It's
yeah,
awesome.
if you look behind me, the wall space I have is not quite big enough. So that'll be certainly a fixture at my next destination, my next background. But
maybe you can move that Porsche poster over just a little bit and get it up over next to that one.
I mean, that's another one that I've got from you. So we're making up half of my wall decorations here. But
I like it. I'm glad I could.
yeah.
I'm glad I could continue to contribute.
Yeah, no, but I guess when you look at it from the outward sense, right? And I think that there's a lot of karting parents that maybe don't really recognize the value, the importance of fitness development in drivers. Where do you see that value coming in at such a young age for karting? Like, if you were to put yourself in the shoes of someone that's maybe as a kid just starting out in karting in the junior levels or early parts of senior levels, where do you think the value comes in when it comes to a program that you guys have?
Man, that's awesome question. I put it on work ethic, to be honest. Like, obviously there's performance things that we'll do, there's safety things that we'll do, and parents always appreciate everything on the safety side. But I think when you have a kid that's still coming up through, and a lot of these guys, maybe they don't play stick and ball sports, right? They're pretty focused on racing, and all of their coaches are very racing focused as well. So I think one of the things that we can provide to them and instill in them is that work ethic of things that you need to do away from the track, and even just away from racing. Maybe those small things that you don't necessarily want to do all the time, but they get to see how important that really is. So, it's going over data, it's doing your workouts, it's doing all of the little things that are going to add up and help you progress your career. And that's something I think we've seen big growth with a couple of our younger drivers is, they may start with us because their parents are making them, and then after 6 months or a year, or in some cases only, 6 days, they're excited to come to the gym. They love that part of it now. So I think helping them realize that there's a lot more to being a good driver than just being in the car, just being in the cart. There's a lot of other things that go into it. And to have that level of work ethic to keep bringing it every day, even if you don't really feel like it, that's where, one of the areas where we come in.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly you kind of get the chance, I would say, to work with people that are all different stages of the development ladder, starting, of course, like from karts all the way up through the ladder. And you have guys that come in kind of with any range of packages too. I mean, you have guys that are in-house every day, could be like 9 a.m., 11 a.m., all through the day, really. And then you also have the separate kind of remote package that people that go to college that are seniors at UNC or whatever may be on. So talk about kind of the internal side of like balancing that and sort of the advantages of being able to personalize the program for each driver and sort of each stage of their career.
Yeah, I mean, whenever we get somebody who comes into our program, we do a full assessment with them, so we know where they're starting. We know what their starting point is, and we evaluate what we call training age. So, somebody can be 25 years old but have never picked up a weight in their entire life, and they could be a professional driver already. on the flip side of that, you could have a 16-year-old, go-karter, a kid who just moved into late models or something like that, and they maybe played football in the first couple of years of high school, so they've got a couple of years of pretty quality training under their belt, working with a coach, that sort of thing. So when obviously we don't want to give those two people the exact same program. We want to be able to tailor it to what their training age is and what they need and what type of car they're going to be racing. So, we try to make sure we provide that level of flexibility and customization. We don't want to just give everybody the same workouts. It doesn't work that way. We're here for sports performance training, not CrossFit or Orange Theory or something like that. Not that there's anything wrong with those, but it's everybody isn't just getting the same cookie cutter workout with our program.
Death letters for everybody. No. Yeah. I think that should be the baseline level workout is double death ladders.
We just had one earlier this week. It was a good effort. So yeah, Scott McLaughlin wanted to do one before he shoved off to St. Pete. So good little confidence booster for him.
Absolutely. Nothing gets you mentally in the zone more than having to do a PitFit death ladder.
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah, but I guess shifting focus a little bit more outwards towards karting as a whole. I mean, you've had a long life of experience when it comes to karting, and we'll get into some of that later, kind of in a second part of the show. But you've kind of been able to see through a number of drivers, a number of kind of drivers working on the national side, the local side of karting in the last 5 to 10 years. I mean, where do you feel like the sport is now, both from the driver's side as well as from kind of the overarching sports side?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the overarching sports side, I love how popular it's become and is continuing to get. I love the level of participation that's taking place. It seems like we have really healthy kart counts at a lot of these races. There's 3 pretty prominent national series in the U.S. right now, which is super impressive. That definitely wasn't the case back when I was still karting, but yeah, I think the participation level and just the general health of it seems to be really positive. But I think also there are some directions that we've gone that maybe don't elicit the best racecraft, so to speak. And I know this is a dead horse that's being beaten once again within the karting community, but yeah, me and guys like myself and CDP and some of the other guys who are in their 30s, we're sitting around talking about how we loved racing with metal rear bumpers, and we weren't ever jumping over wheels and stuff like that. So maybe it makes me seem old. Maybe it's just from like the time of karting that I was in. But yeah, I would like to see better racecraft, and I don't have the answer for what that is, but it would be nice to see karters come out of karting with the better racecraft. Now, and I think there are the really top level guys. You see that, like when Connor Zilic came out of karting, his racecraft was very good. It wasn't like he was part of the problem, but yeah, I think there's certain rules that we've made and pieces of bodywork that we've added that maybe make it a little more enticing as opposed to less to beat and bang and that sort of thing. But yeah, I would like to see just more of a culture of good racecraft as opposed to having to try to regulate it.
Yeah.
Wishful thinking, of course.
No, 100%. But is there a mentality difference you would say that you've noticed between kind of the younger drivers you've worked with and maybe some of the guys like a CDP that have, or like a Neil Verhagen that have kind of been through the karting ladder almost a decade ago at this point, and sort of how they view it versus how someone that's maybe 14 or 15 now sees karting and sees racecraft?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily the the time that they raced, or just the nature of what it is now versus then. But guys like CDP, they raced out of, he was a privateer for most of his karting career. I always was. I never ran with. I mean, I did one race with Mike Doty back in like 2008, and I thought I was big time for that. That was my big. I'm racing with a big team finally. But yeah, I think the prevalence of running with a team now versus running as a privateer probably feeds into that a little bit more. Very few or fewer people now are showing up with their own cart that they would have to fix if they wrecked it, that they would have to worry about if something happened, versus running with one of these big teams and a chassis gets bent and they roll another one out for you, ready to go, and dad writes a check and you're back on track. So it's tough to say if that's really what feeds into it, or if it is the racing in the 90s and 2000s versus racing in the 20 teens and 2020s. But it's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah, and as we get the next 5 years down the line, so to speak, is there anything? I know you mentioned it's tough where there's no real solution to it, but is there something you would like to see, some like tangible solution that Trey Shannon wants to make for everyone in karting that you think would make the product better?
Yeah, I think if everybody was on a PitFit training program, that would definitely do it. Yeah, that would take care of all the issues.
Make them do snap tech enough times, and
yeah,
it'll drill logic in their head.
Exactly. Yeah, for USPKS, for SCUSA, for stars, it's just mandatory PitFit program if you want to enter.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think though, speaking on a personal side, the cognitive side of things, even if sometimes I still have the irrational thoughts, irrational racecraft, the cognitive drills that you guys do, and I think this is something that maybe a lot of people don't really recognize from an outward sense, can really help when it comes to sort of slowing down the environment around a racer, but not in the sense of like them slowing down their decision making, but it kind of helps regulate the thought process. I think that's something that certainly you guys have done a good job of kind of like helping with any level of racing, and is one of the first things I would say you notice when you go into a PitFit program. But I think it's something that maybe if you could expand on that in terms of how you guys help in that sense, because I think it feeds into drivers making the right decisions, drivers not putting themselves in bad positions, and drivers kind of overcoming the urge to, let's just say, crash out in modern terms.
Yeah. I mean, you nailed it with the phrase "slow down the environment." So, like you said, we're not slowing down the decision making; we're actually speeding that up. But we're doing it by making it seem like everything else is happening in slow motion. So, essentially, if we can increase the brain's processing speed, then everything else that's happening around you feels like it's happening more slowly. So then your decisions that you feel like you're making at a normal rate, you're actually making those faster, because obviously the environment around you hasn't slowed down. You're just processing more quickly. So yeah, our whole goal is to increase that brain processing speed and then build skills around that, whether it's your peripheral vision, whether it's being able to shift your gaze from near to far and far back to near, something like that. Eye-hand coordination. There's a lot of different elements that go into it, but at the basis of it is we want the brain to work faster. That's pretty much what it all boils down to. And that's one of the areas that I mentioned earlier with safety. We can make the body more resilient by doing strength training. We can add bone density, add muscle mass. That's all well and good, very helpful. But what really keeps drivers even safer is being able to make better, quicker decisions on track, avoiding accidents, maybe not putting yourself in a spot where an accident could occur, that sort of thing. Being able to evaluate more of what's going on around you than you could previously. and being able to just put your car in a better spot for when something ahead of you does happen, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think the safety value of the cognitive training is huge.
Yeah, and doing it under, I guess, intense load as well. Like a lot of times with the circuits you guys do, and or at a minimum, kind of integrating in cognitive training right after a hard workout or right after a workout, kind of
Mm-hmm.
stimulates,
Yeah.
I guess, the on-track environment, the on-track heart rate
Yeah.
raising and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll make and we do a number of different things with when we put those into a workout. So like you just said, we'll do it after cardio or intermixed with the workout where heart rate's elevated. And for some people that makes the cognitive drills easier. For some people it makes the cognitive drills more difficult. Sometimes it's easier up until a certain fatigue level, and then it gets more difficult. So we actually try to find where that is for each person and fatigue them to the point where it is adding additional cognitive load just to do the same drill that they maybe could have done a little bit more easily fresh. With our sports car drivers, we'll actually have them come in when they walk in the door before they even do their warm up. Sometimes we'll throw them on the sensory station, have them do some cognitive drills because you never know when they're going to need to get into the car under a green flag condition, and they better not lose a spot when they're coming out of the pits. They better not lose a second to whoever they need to go chase or to whoever's chasing them. They need to be on it immediately. So we want to work on getting that brain switched on from cold to active and make that time as short as possible. And then for a lot of these guys too, we'll put them in the sauna, and after their workout, they're taking a phone or an iPad or something into the sauna with them, and they're doing some cognitive drills in there too.
Yeah, certainly. I think doing the cognitive drills in the sauna as a whole, like, is it's a different kind of intensity, I would say, but certainly, I mean, I feel like anything that you do with a cognitive workout or like with a cognitive drill within a workout has some level of kind of complexity to it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that's special. But I guess before we wrap up this side of the segment, I want to hear, what do you feel like the biggest misconception that people have about fitness and racing, and particularly fitness and karting, is?
Man, that's a loaded question right there. That's huge. I think obviously the biggest misconception is that drivers aren't athletes, right? That's the kind of the big argument. I think for at least recently, most people have kind of come around to recognize drivers as athletes. But what I don't think most people realize is the amount of load a driver is under when they're in the car or in the cart. People don't realize how fast things really do happen. They see it on TV, and it looks like people are driving cars. And TV really just doesn't do the speed of racing justice. And like you've been to plenty of races, you've seen plenty of races on TV, and it looks fast on TV, but then you go to the race and it looks even faster. And
100%.
then I think even from watching on the sidelines, then if you went and tried it yourself, now it's even faster. So a lot of people don't realize how fast things really do happen and how quickly a brain needs to process all of those things and how much a brain needs to process to be successful, actually just to get around the track, let alone be successful in racing in a pack with other people. So I think the cognitive load of what a driver is under is very underestimated. There's a huge misconception about how difficult it is to drive a race car, both physically and cognitively. I mean, the race car is an extremely violent environment. Most people would be, I think most people would be thrown off. I mean, literally, their brain processing would be thrown off just by how loud a race car is, let alone how much it's vibrating, or the fact that it's 160 degrees inside if you're in a closed cockpit, how little you can really see when you have a helmet on. how little you can actually move when you have all of your gear on, how hot that fireproof suit is, how hot it is sitting on a grid in a go-kart in the
Yeah.
summer. I mean, it's absolutely brutal. And the go-kart itself, I think what a lot of people don't realize is that if we don't wear rib vests in a go-kart, we're cracking a rib.
It's a killer.
And I don't think the normal person can really fathom that until they actually see it and feel it. So yeah, I think the biggest misconception is just how difficult driving a go-kart or a race car really is.
Yeah. I mean, that's 100%. I mean, first off, the racing drivers aren't athletes. Feels like it's been something we've been fighting forever. In recent years, with the rise of F1, I feel like at least a lot more of the casuals, so to speak, have kind of come around at least somewhat on that idea.
Yeah.
But there's still, I guess, like a discrepancy between what people see the difficulties of racing, the difficulties between kind of the racing environment, and then what actual difficulties the racing driver face are. And I think the cognitive load and the amount of, I guess, environment challenges that take place irregardless of how fast you can kind of drive a car is something that I think gets overlooked by a lot of people, because ultimately, like you mentioned, you're basically racing in a pressure cooker within a closed cockpit car. You're extremely tight confines and basically a rocket ship in an open cockpit car.
Yeah.
In a kart, you're basically out there baking in an environment with with an egregious amount of power to weight ratio, and in some cases, an insane amount of load on the body. I mean, to me, you hit it right on the head. The amount of complexities that go into to racing, and kind of the amount of different things that PitFit has to account for when it comes to training a driver. It's certainly, I think, something that a lot of people don't quite have the appreciation that they should have.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes about driving a race car that I've ever heard comes from, you may not remember this guy. His name is Parker Johnstone. He ran a lot of Trans Am and sports cars, and then had his couple years in IndyCar and Champ Car back in the 90s, around the mid 90s, and then he became a broadcaster. And during one of the races, he said, I want to make sure I get this right because it's really good. He said driving, and he was referring to driving an Indy car, but he said driving a race car is like doing differential calculus on a Stairmaster in a sauna. And if you make a mistake, somebody smacks you in the head with a brick and takes $20,000 out of your pocket. And I thought that was just so accurate. I was like, that's
elite.
That's 100% true. I mean, that sums it up.
That is, man, I got to use that one.
So that's what I train people for. I train people for doing differential calculus on a Stairmaster in a sauna.
Trey has taught me to do DiffEQ once, like 3 years ago.
I had to dig deep for that one, but we got there.
Yeah.